This session was planned. I was thinking of this session from last 3 4 months, and we couldn't materialize owing to the hectic schedule of Jay. And today finally will be yeah, we got it. Hi Jay. Oh, some issue.
Hi, Prince. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, loud and clear. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great to have you today. So I was just saying, Jay, we thought 3 4 months ago we have been planning this session, and finally
I know, I know.
we are up
I'm
to it.
really sorry for delaying, but
Not
it seems,
nothing to be sorry. Just
but it
we
seems like
understand,
it
right?
is a good time to do this session now.
Exactly. Right, right. So guys, without wasting any time, so let me take a moment to introduce our guest for today. So Jay Shah is a bachelor's and master's in chemical engineer from ICT, that is Institute of Chemical Technology. He also runs a family business in specialty chemicals, which gives him an access or edge so as to get to know about the ground movements and insights into the sector and understand the value chain very closely. So the session would be we'll be covering the session, the sector as a whole, and we also be talking about subsectors within chemical and the value chain and the China plus one element. So this is going to be one of a session. So a very warm welcome, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So Jay, although I introduced you, but again, would appreciate if you tell our attendees about yourself a little bit, and then you set a backdrop for the session, a monologue basically around what we would be discussing today, and then we have our set of questions. I'll ask my questions, and then the forum will be open for our attendees. They can also ask their questions, and please take this session as an educational session. Any names which we would be taking during the conversation will be so as to illustrate our points, and there is no sort of buy sell recommendation. Please consult your financial advisors before taking any decisions. Yeah, Jay, over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prince. And thank you guys for attending this on a Saturday evening. So, basically, I am a chemical engineer. I have done my master's in chemical engineering. I specialized in the wastewater and effluent treatment, although while during my master's. And we have a family business which is into specialty chemicals for the polymers, paper, paints, and the textile industry, which is almost close to 30 years old now. So we've been in the business, and this was always a sector where I think a lot of people face difficulty understanding. So thanks, Prince, for actually letting me do this. And what happens is because of the business and the qualifications, it becomes very easy to know where the cycle is or how the sector is doing in terms of volumes, demand, pricing pressure, input pressure, export, China plus one, etc. So just to run you through, what we'll do is basically first I will give you a basic framework on how you can start looking at the sector. What kind of metrics do I use when I check the sector or any company, for example? What are the parameters? Secondly, I will just tell you in detail about what this China plus one story is really about. And then, yeah, maybe we can take question and answers because I think I would be more than happy to solve your doubts rather than telling, what I feel about the sector. So, just to start with, I think when you see chemicals as a sector, so it consists of specialty, commodity chemicals, even agrochemicals becomes a part of the subset of the larger sector. What I would emphasize and what I generally emphasize on while looking at any company is I look at a process leader or and not a product leader. Basically, when I say process leader, I mean someone who is very good at one or two particular chemistries like say amines or fluorines or nitrates or benzenes or sulfur chemistry for that example. What this gives the company an edge in the long run is because chemical is a thing where there is so much R&D going on day to day basis globally. There is always a threat of your product being substituted. you know uh, I mean, it can happen overnight, it can happen in 3 months, 6 months, but you never know who in the world is working on a product which is a substitute product to your top, to any of your top 3 or 5 or 10 products, and that can really, surprise you as a company overnight whenever that product is launched. However, when that happens, even to a chemistry leader, what they can do is there is always a derivative of the current product line that you are, that you can switch to, which will have application in certain other sector, in other end uses. What that does is, it gives you the, time to even shift to the right molecules that might come, in demand going ahead in your particular chemistry. Whereas if you are a product leader, majorly what is your advantage, either is it going to be backward integration, or you are going to be the lowest cost producer, so like you will have like huge volumes. And what happens is, when you get product substitute and your product gets substituted, a lot of the capacity can go, just unutilized. So that is one of the most important points that I would say. Always choose a process leader and not a product leader. Also look at, the plants that are environmental, have all the environmental compliances and they comply to the pollution norms. And look at a production process. So there is, so even if you see in India, even in, let's say, for example, the amines industry, if you compare Balaji versus Alkyl, one of the companies has completely, imported the technology from a foreign partner, and the other one has developed it indigenously. And if you see, you if you even ask the management, you will find out, or even if you do a channel check, you will find out that the company which has indigenously developed the technology, their products have turned out to be cheaper, and they are much competitive in the rate, basically. So what that also does is, you are, when the technology changes, let's say globally, so, and if your licensee partner is not able to embrace the new technology, or not able to do innovate a new technology, you are at the, you are at the mercy of your licensee. So, it becomes very difficult for you to then change and come to the new technology. Whereas if you have always indigenously developed technologies on yourself, although it is a time consuming process, but it will always tell you that how you can pivot to the new product line, new technology. Also, another thing and the most important thing that you need to look at this sector, when you look at this sector, you see a lot of guys will keep telling कि हम specialty करते हैं, हम semi specialty करते हैं, etc etc. But the thing that you have to keep in mind is, what are the kind of molecules or products that they are making, and what is their market size in India and globally. Because what happens is, sometimes if a company is actually doing something super special also, but if the total addressable market itself is, less than 1000 or 700, 500, 800 crores or something, because it is so niche, then there is no point, the company is not going to able to grow beyond the point. So you have to keep both the things in mind, the total addressable market and the kind of molecules that they are working on. When So these are some of the parameters where you look at the company. Now there are some parameters which, like, let's say, I would give you input, what is the input raw material cost, and what is the kind of dependency that they have on crude, or what is the kind of dependency that they have on China. Because see, when COVID type things happens and things turn around, if you are 50-70% dependent on China, it's there is always going to be a big risk of your supplier not able to supply you the required quantities. Second, you need to see is the peer competition in India and globally. Because what happens is, see, if you are a small player right now, okay, you will be able to capture the India market, but there needs to be enough market even outside that, beyond the point. If you have to go and scale outside also, there needs to be enough market even globally. Third, like I said again, the chemistry leader with a nimble plant design, because the plant design is so important. Uh, why I will tell you. Let's say if you are if you are making a particular product using a particular chemistry, and like we just discussed, if your product gets substituted overnight, the plant should be designed in a way that within 10 to 15 days or a month of work, you can switch to a new product using the similar chemistry. Because a lot of times, like I said, one of the biggest players in the country, who's a great player in the benzene chemistry, they have done so much capex, but the plant design was such that they did capex for every set of product. and some of the products have not actually seen the kind of demand they had forecasted or they had predicted, and hence some of their assets are lying totally dead, like they are at 10 to 12% utilization in the last 3 years. So that is a very big negative that you can do as a chemical company when you are investing in capex. Other thing that you have to see is the dependency on the imports of the finished good itself, and you have to see at what what rate that the demand for that product is growing. Because what happens is sometimes there is a lot of these tailwinds going on, that import substitute, but you have to see that how much is the amount of import that is being done in the country right now. Let's say if it's just 2000 or 3000 tons, and if it's growing at 2 to 3% CAGR, there is no point for you to set up a plant, because even if you take 50% market share, your end market is not growing. So that is very important to see that at what speed is the end market growing, and how much is the import and how much is the total quantum of imports in the country. So basically, that again is important. Like I said, addressable size of molecule or product in the current portfolio. Uh, Second, basically, this is one of the most important things I look at is intellectual capital of the company. So, like you have financial capital and you have asset capital, there is something called as intellectual capital. See, intellectual capital in a pharma or a chemical company is so important because when you are a specialty player and if you specialize in certain chemistries or certain molecules, it is your manpower that is responsible for the continuous growth of the company. So the intellectual capital, like the number of scientists or number of PhDs or number of master students that you have, is also very important in a chemical company. Because see what has happened in 2020, 2020 and 2022 is I have seen personally that a lot of companies started calling themselves as specialty chemical companies or whatever those kind of names have labeling were started. But if you go and see how many people were employed, and if you would have just asked the promoters in the con call कि बॉस तुम्हारा R&D पे spend कितना है या कितने लोग हैं R&D में, there were not there more than 7-8 people in a 350 to 500 staff. So that itself can give you an indication that boss, this is not really a specialty, super specialty or a niche player. This is just a commodity or a semi specialty player who is just trying to take advantage of the tailwinds or the bull market. So intellectual capital, addressable market size of molecules, the chemistry leader with a nimble plant design, ability to control your costs is very important, and your backward integration again very important, indigenous technology development equally important. So this is basically the framework. I think Prince, I can probably, I don't know how, but I can send you this framework, and then if we can share with people, I don't know how we can do that. But yeah, so this is basically the rough framework that I I use personally when I look at a chemical or a agro or a pharma or etc. any company in the space. Now, coming to China plus one, so just making it very clear that this China plus one is not really something that has started in 2019, 2020. This has been going on for more than 12 years in our knowledge, and this started back in 2010, 2011. So what happened was back in 2010-11, the big guys that you see today, like your Aartis, Naveens, Deepaks, Sudarshan, etc., they realized in 2010 that the kind of compliance levels India had were very poor, and they saw an opportunity because most of these companies had their founding management or the board of directors all were chemical engineers. So they saw that this is probably a chance to differentiate themselves from the rest of the pack. That's why if you see in 2010, all these companies were probably micro to small caps, and to where they have grown in 10 years is basically because they realized in 2010-11 that they have a huge opportunity, because they knew their chemistry was always strong, but where they were lacking was compliance and environmental pollution norms, basically, which were flouted in India. So these guys started investing in effluent treatment, ESG, environmental norms, pollution norms, zero liquid discharge, all of this in 2010-11. Obviously, for the first 2 years, there was an impact on their balance sheets, but eventually they could recycle the water. They could recycle a lot of solvents that they were just throwing away, and that eventually got their cost down from 2004 till by 2013-14. And then they realized that they are equally cost competitive with China in a lot of specialty products. This is not for commodities, this is purely for specialty that I'm talking, that China Plus One started back in 2010-11. And slowly and steadily, these Indian companies that we spoke about, they started gaining recognition on the global front. And India was always good at chemistry, and when these costs came down, they realized that they could compete with China no matter what China does. See, commodity was a different game because it was all of a game of volume, but specialty was never a game of volume. It was always a game of skill, efficiency, purity, product concentration, and your pollution norms. That's it. And all they had to work was on pollution norms, and that's when you see from 2014-15 the way these companies have scaled up and are still scaling up and putting capex and still are confident for the next 10 years also, is purely because they know that they have it in them when it comes to their chemistry or their products or their molecules. And if you see, so another way, if you want to analyze chemical companies, is see that where when you say China Plus One, there any chemical starts from either two products, like at least the all the aromatic chemicals. One is nitrobenzene, second is phenol. Now if you go and see, there are only two players in the country who control the entire chain. One is RT Industries because they are the masters of benzene chemistry, and other one is Deepak Nitrite because they are the masters in now phenol and phenolic derivatives. So if you really want to understand what a company is doing in terms of specialty, when they say specialty, what you can do is just take their product. You can ask the management, okay, how many steps do you have? And even if you go and take their product and just type it on Google, that what is the chemical name for whatever their product is, or there is something called as, in chemicals there is something called as IUPAC name. So when you go and you check that, basically you will come to know that how many steps has been taken after procuring a nitrobenzene or a phenol. The more the number of steps, it should give you an idea that the company is doing a lot of value additions, and the lesser the number of steps, obviously it's vice versa. So for any one of you who wants to understand, let's say you are holding any chemical company in your portfolio which terms itself as a specialty chemical, just try and see how many steps they do by on the raw benzene or the raw phenol that they take from either of these guys. That is one of the ways you can see that how complicated is your company's product profile. So that was about China Plus One. Prince, you want me to cover anything else, or I mean, I would like to know the questions that people.
Yeah, so Jay, like I'll ask my set of questions.
Sure,
So if the questions appear, me know. Otherwise, you can keep on answering. So
sure,
what
sure.
are the key factors driving the performance of chemical sector in the equity market? So what do you think? Like, what could be the key factors?
So, see, uh, if you want to deep dive into China Plus One, like I said, the factor is de-risking. See, China Plus One was always there. It was just that 70% used to come from China, 30% used to come from India. Now the thing is 65% or 60% will come from India and 40% will go from China for any customer who's sitting in the Europe or the US. So that is one of the reasons. So if you say 35 to 65, we are doing 100% jump in the next few years. So that is huge for a lot of companies. That's why you see in the equity market, see, equity markets is a result of what's happening in the companies. So like I said, in the companies, what has happened in the last 10 years and will continue for another 10 years is basically they know that they can compete in their field of expertise. And you pick up any company, you pick up any company in a particular chemistry, everyone is doing capex. I met a lot of the promoters 3 weeks back. There was a chemical expo in Mumbai, and everyone was like, okay, there may be pain in short term because of the all these destocking and inventory and freight rates and whatnot, but that is all just a small bump in a long ride. So everyone's going ahead with their capex. There is no one who's pausing the capex. It's just that they were like, ठीक है, मतलब a quarter or two क्या delay होगा या pain होगा, but that is not how a company which is looking at a 10-year will, think कि ये quarter में होगा या next quarter में होगा. So I think that is one of the reasons why you are seeing chemicals perform so well in the equity markets over the last few years, and I feel they might still continue. But one thing I would want the people here, and I would want people to understand really, really well, is what happened in 2020, 2021 was a one off. Do not expect any such thing to happen in the next 50, 70 years. See, the thing is, you have to understand one thing very clear. A product that's valued at 50 rupees or 60 rupees was selling at 400, 500, 700, and whatnot. And the consumption of a customer, which was, let's say, 100 tons a month, he stocked up 700 tons, 800 tons, thinking that there is no tomorrow. So now just do the volume into the price realization jump. It is 10x in price, 5x in volume. That kind of scenario will not happen. So, also, like all of you, assuming you are equity investors, do not expect that kind of a bull run or a fast paced bull run in any of the chemical names. That much I would like to warn you. But if you are bullish for 8 to 10 years, this is a sector where entry barriers are really, really high. And trust me, going ahead, the compliance is becoming so strict that a lot of people will go out of business. Only the best of the best will survive in the industry, and then they can command a premium. बट अगेन 2020 2021 लाइक जैसा कोविड 100 साल में एक बार था, ये भी 50 साल में एक बार था. ऐसे ऐसे प्राइजेस सस्टेनेबल नहीं होते हैं, ना ऐसी डिमांड आती है. सो या दैट्स
Right.
द ब्रॉड thesis. Yeah.
Right. So, Jay, how has the recent geopolitical landscape affected the chemical sector investment prospects? And do you see, initially, like when the Ukraine war started and this inflation thing, raw material pricing and all, so are things stabilizing now, or
Yes,
like
yes,
how you
yes.
see this?
So, see, there are stabilization on both the sides. The input prices have also come down big time, but at the same time, even the finished product prices have come down big time. So, it's basically what's happening. What has happened in the last 6 quarters is from a peak euphoria, you went to peak pessimism also in a lot of chemical names. Like something that used to trade around 80 went to 160, came down to 35, and now it's again at 65, 70. So maybe in a quarter or two again things will come at their long term average, provided obviously crude and everything stays the same. But otherwise, in a quarter or two everything should be at least at their long term averages. And again, that's why I said, when the input price and the finished goods price both are at long term averages, you cannot expect demand to just be, keep happening above their long term averages. Demand is also going to be in lockstep with the supply. There's always going to be that. What happened in 2020 21 again was a supply demand mismatch, and that's why you saw those kind of prices, and hence those kind of prices in the stocks also. So majorly everything is coming back to normal. And yeah, I mean, so see, there might be a new normal because of inflation, like something that was trading at 40, the new normal is, let's say, 60. Okay, but the new normal can never be 400, or the new normal can never be 20 also. So if the company is doing, so whenever now you track a company, look at how much the volume growth is, look at how much the realization growth is also. The day realizations come back to 2017, 18, 19 levels, you realize that okay, this is coming back to long term averages. And then the real thing starts, where the company is actually growing volumes. That means that particular company where their products are being used as an end user industry is in a better spot compared to if some other chemical company is not doing so well.
All right. Yeah. So, Jay, which specific subsectors in the sector you see particularly promising for investors at this point in time? I mean, obviously, we are not expecting company names, but any pockets specifically in the subsectors in your mind?
Uh, so see what. I don't know, just take it with a pinch of salt, but I feel that agro as a space going ahead, and especially very specific targeted crop protection chemicals, will do much better compared to a lot of specialty chemicals. Not all, but a lot of specialty chemical companies. Because see, again, the reason being, when I say the sector, not almost everyone in the sector is a specialty guy. There are barely 10 or 12 specialty chemical players in India who are working at scale. Rest all of them are either job workers, or they are semi-specialty, or they do formulation, but there's no hardcore specialty chemical as such in most of them. So I feel that is one sector that people can study. Otherwise, see, I would say chemicals as a sector can always be thought as a proxy play. So what you can do is, let's say if you are very bullish on some of the other sectors, let's say for example a footwear sector or a QSR or an auto consumption theme, whatever, because India basically being a rising economy, you're going to have a lot of sectors where your spending is going to increase or discretionary spending is going to increase. So once you get that, and once you realize, okay, that this is the sector you like, let's say auto or QSR, so then what you can do is you can actually get down the drain and realize, okay, what are, see, everything around you, I mean, you like it or you don't like it, but everything around you is chemicals. Whatever you eat, whatever you wear, whatever you drink, there is some sort of chemical in everything. So this is a field where, trickle down economics works very well, and trickle down thinking also works very well, I feel. You can realize that, okay, if you are bullish on certain themes, maybe you can then go and check, okay, what do you like. Let's say if you are bullish on textiles, then if you're bullish on textiles, there's something that every textile would need is a dyes. Now when you like dyes, you can look at the dyes players, or even if you want to go down a step further, you can go and look at the guys who make the intermediates for the dyes industry. So that is one example to look at that. Like, let's say if you are someone who is very bullish on, industrials, or very bullish on cables, wires, something. So then for that, there are a lot of chemicals that go in the insulation of copper wires. So that is one sector. Now, if you're bullish on pharma, now then when if you're bullish on pharma, what's happening is 50% of the molecules today in pharma or agro are fluorine based. So then you can go and look at the fluorine players who's doing what. There are barely 4 to 5 fluorine players in the country. You can go and study them and analyze them. Okay, who is more exposed to pharma, who's more exposed to agro. That is one way to look at it. uh, Another way maybe, mm, I mean, I, I think that would be a better approach for people who are not from the chemical sector to look at the chemical sector, because otherwise, what happens is you will just get confused and lost, that where do you start from, how do you analyze every company, because every company is different, every product is different, their product pricing is very different. So, yeah, it's kind of confusing for a person who's from outside the industry completely. So I feel you can actually follow a trickle down approach to look at chemicals.
Right, Jay. Although you touched upon this concept, but again, how does the increasing emphasis on sustainability and environmental regulations impact the chemical sector's investment landscape?
Oh, so I think this is probably the biggest shift that is happening in India right now. The emphasis on compliance is just increasing day by day. So, like, just to give you a picture, 10 years back, what used to happen was you only had to deal with your MIDC or a GIDC. At max, there was an MPCB or GPCB where you could, settle your matter even if you used to pollute the industry. What is happening now is the National Green Tribunal has taken the baton in their hands. They have given MIDCs, GIDCs, MPCBs, GPCBs very strict instructions that you will not be getting more water than whatever is sanctioned to your particular MIDC or a GIDC. And second thing, what happens is, so when you set up a plant, there is depending on the size of your plant, like you are 1,000 tons, 5,000 tons, 10,000 tons, there is a certain limit of effluent that you can send to the CETP, which is called the Common Effluent Treatment Plant, which is a part of every MIDC, GIDC, or any industrial area. So what happens is there is a cap on, let's say, if you have 10,000 tons of capacity, you will be able to release 5,000 liters of water every day, for example. Now, what used to happen previously is when you go from 10,000 to 20,000, uh, it was assumed and it was even permitted that from 5,000 liters you can release 10,000 liters. However, today, given the paucity of water and the heat wave that we are experiencing, the NGT has come out and told every state industrial corporation that this thing will not be allowed. Now, if you are doing a brownfield capex or in your facility, if you double the capacity, do not assume that you will be getting 5,000 additional liters or whatever the proportion is, additional liters to be sent to the common ETP. So that is a very, very, very serious move that is in the offing. And trust me, effluent treatment is going to be a huge, huge sector going ahead when it comes to chemicals. So you can even look, see again, that is one more interesting thing. If the compliance is going to keep on increasing in the country, and effluent treatment plants are going to set up, across the country, a lot of chemicals even are used in the effluent treatment itself. So you can even look at companies that make those chemicals. So that is another way of ideation.
Right. Yeah. So Jay, we also got Ishmohit. So Ishmohit, if you have any questions or interact with Jay, please feel free to comment.
So Jai bhai, hope you're doing well.
I'm good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing great यार, आप बताओ.
बस बस बढ़िया है.
तो जय हैड अ क्वेश्चन यार, ये अगर आजकल एग्रोकेमिकल जो जेनेरिक वाले क्या चल रहा है इनमें प्राइसिंग तो काफी मतलब
Again,
like some of the companies reported results. So we saw the margin,
absolutely.
then what has happened to the prices, like the earnings have literally collapsed. So what is happening over there in this part of the industry?
Again, see, so like I said, specialty. So again, the same kind of mischief happened in 2020, 2021 in the agro sector, saying everyone is a crop protection guy. However, most of the people were doing Me Too products, including some of the marquee names which were into, triazoles or pyrethroids. Nothing is a specialty. Most of them were Me Too products, and there are bare minimum at least five players in every category or every molecule that these companies said is specialty. So this was bound to happen. However, and another thing that was happening is same kind of the destocking effects also happened. Inventory reduction is still happening in Europe and US. So another 1 or 2 quarters. But again, these companies that specifically have come out with the results in the last 4 5 days. I think we know which companies have come out with the results. All of them are Me Too product categories. So do not expect again a 2020 2021 like scenario. At max, they can probably do a few hundred bips higher from here, given the input pressure will come down, the coal prices, power prices, fuel prices will come back to normal. So a couple of hundred basis points bump up and just coming back to their long term average. But I don't think these are the guys who can sustainably do 25% EBITDA margins for 5 7 years on a year on year basis, which is what they portrayed in 2021.
Right, right. And another question कि so there's a large chemical conglomerate. तो नाम ले ही लेते हो, वैसे तो बड़ी कंपनी है
पता
काफी.
है
So
पता है.
again, nothing by yourself. Atul, like Atul,
Yes.
right? So basically, what I went through the Atul note, so because I track the sector, so I go through earnings of each and every company. So they are saying in their post earnings, वैसे उनका earnings call ही analyst meet होता है हर साल के end में,
Hmm.
कि they expanded for sulfur black,
Hmm.
and what has happened कि all of a sudden कि Chinese capacities weren't there, so they did a massive expansion. So that would have made them like second or third largest player of sulfur black in the world. And what has happened कि 2 साल के लिए चाइना लॉकडाउन में था, तो अब 1 साल में चाइना में जैसे ही वापस प्लांट स्टार्ट हुए हैं, कहीं पे इनर मंगोलिया में स्टार्ट हुआ है, कहीं पे चाइना में वापस स्टार्ट हुए हैं. So like a lot of dumping is started for sulfur black, and they applied for an anti-dumping duty in India, and it got basically rejected by the Indian government. And internationally also the prices have corrected. So they are saying कि it's like the Olympics, like जैसे चाइना में 2008 बेजिंग ओलंपिक्स हुआ था, कि पोस्ट ओलंपिक्स एक साल के लिए तो आपने सब ब्लू स्काई पॉलिसी में सब चाइन प्लांट्स को बंद कर रखा था, उसके बाद जैसे ही स्टार्ट हुआ तो बहुत मैसिव डंपिंग हुआ. Are you seeing something similar happening in the industry right now across?
So I think, see, again, sulfur black, first of all, it's a sulfur dye. Uh, they have been leaders in the country for the past 32 years. And the problem with sulfur black is, see, first of all, highly polluting. Second, it has over the years very restrictive use. Pellets used to be, even used for all the fabrics and everything. However, now only majorly denim garment processors use sulfur black. In the last 10 years, a lot of liquid variants of sulfur black have come in. Atul also has started with the liquid variant of sulfur black. However, they are not successful in the market. Keminova, a company based out of Bharuch, Jagadia, is a leader in liquid sulfur black. And see, the thing is, China was always dumping in India sulfur black for almost donkey years. They have been doing this. And to be honest, even if the duty comes, there are hundreds of ways through which Chinese products enter the Indian market. So a duty as such works only on paper and only works for a large B2B buyer, but the small buyers, which is actually majority of what Atul's market is, basically Mumbai and Bangalore and Gujarat, where majority of the denim processing happens, is a large market. So I think dumping was bound to happen. Second thing, I wouldn't say it's dumping. It's just China coming back to normalcy, like how things are happening, back to normal in India or any country. China is also just coming back to normal, and the way trades were happening pre-COVID, again the same kind of trades are happening. Like if you can see something very similar. See, caustic soda went from 29 rupees to 63 rupees, but that was only because the Romanian and Poland Polish capacities and Russian capacities were shut. People, what they do is they extrapolate always the good scenario, which is the worst thing you can do in something like chemicals, because the pace at which things change in chemicals, it's out of me or you or any investor's purview. And so China is just doing what they were doing. They were just giving the chemicals, and this is majorly happening in commodity chemicals, not in very niche or specialty chemicals. China has just started the supply of the normal chemicals like caustic soda, soda ash, and a lot of other solvents, a lot of dyes, intermediates, which India always used to trade with them. It was nothing new. So it is just things coming back to normalcy, but people are not able to digest it because the good times came very soon and were short lived. So people thought this will stay forever. So, and this mistake even industry veterans have made. Like you named the company doing capex technically at the top of the cycle, if you want to believe that or whatever. But yeah, they fell for the trap again. So these things were bound to happen. China was always going to come back. And now, again, like for example, caustic soda prices are back to 29, 30 rupees. So it was just a year and a half of, you can say Diwali for Indian chemical manufacturers, and it's over. Now it is again going to be a
Right,
battle of skill
right.
and
तो
talent.
इस पे जैसे like now coming to the pigment
Hmm.
space. So pigments के अंदर अब जैसे like one of the largest pigment manufacturers, so he again expanded and nearly like you can say top of the cycle.
Hmm.
But I see many people are looking at this business, but last decade में also यार his export revenues have barely grown at 9% CAGR, and his domestic revenues have grown at 15% CAGR. And now export is again in the doghouse because western countries का मतलब उतना demand नहीं है अभी pigments का. So how do you think about such companies where अगर within the chemical sector you can sub segment it,
Right.
right? कि कुछ कंपनीज होंगी 20-25% पे ग्रो कर रही है, कुछ कंपनीज हैं जिनका लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ रेट ही 8-9% के आसपास है, even though they might start looking cheap at a point of time. So how do you think about this scenario कि सब segment कैसे कर रहे हो सेक्टर को इस टाइप पे?
So, like coming back to the company that you mentioned about pigments. So, see, you cannot compare the last 10 years with what will unfold now, because I'll tell you, the company that you mentioned, became the third largest in the world from ninth largest in the world in the last 10 years itself. I agree that it kind of did the capex at the top of the cycle, but somehow they have still survived the down cycle and are almost, this is probably another 8 to 9 months of pain that the textile dyes and the paint industry will see. Uh, See, again, even on the bad side, I think people make this mistake of extrapolating that the bad will also last for longer. See, Europe was in a pain for the last 10, 12, 15 months. It might be still in pain for last 6 to 8 months, another 6, 8 months maybe. But they will also come back. Like, see, a lot of things are reopening in Europe. Energy prices have come down. A lot of plants are restarting in Europe. Caustic plants have started back. Soda ash plants have started. A big chemical giant which shut 20, 20, 30% of their Ludwigshafen facility, that's planning almost by end of this year they will restart that facility if the things remain constant, the especially the energy and the crude prices. So see, bad times also don't last forever. So this is typically a sector like, let's say, pigment is a sector where in India also in the last 10 years there has been huge consolidation. Today you don't have more than four, not even four actually. You cannot even name pure play three pigment players who have the entire Vibgyor range, inorganic and organic. There is no one who is able to serve the spectrum. And if the player has survived in the down cycle, even the reversion to the mean for them can actually give you good returns. I mean, in talking in stock terms. Now, coming back to company, you have to see that where the expansion has happened, what kind of product mix it had when it gave it to Europe, where vis-a-vis it gave it to India. So let's say the company which has done the expansion, they are the world leaders in PI yellow. Basically, it's called the Pigment Yellow 73. That is one of the grades where they had probably the best mix in the world, and majority of the capex has gone to that particular product itself. So eventually when things, the auto industry will pick up in Europe also. If you listen to Sonacom or Bharat Forge, they are saying that they don't see really a recessionary slowdown in Europe or US. Maybe the demand can soften, but it's not like just going to zero. So once those industries come back, these guys who already have their names established in certain product categories, they will come back to business. And then even a 10-15% pickup in demand gradually over the next year or two will again get them back to their long term averages. But you will need patience when you look at these kind of sectors. You cannot expect things to take a V-shaped recovery.
Right, right. तो मतलब बिकॉज वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट डिफरेंट सब सेगमेंट्स विद इन केमिकल्स, तो एक और क्वेश्चन था, तो आई वाज जस्ट डूइंग दिस मैपिंग ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री. तो FY 94 से डेटा ले गया है अमाइंस वालों का, एंड वी वर जस्ट लुकिंग एट देयर ग्रोथ रेट्स. सो वन थिंग दैट हैज बीन वेरी इंप्रेसिव अबाउट दिस इंडस्ट्री इज कि इनका मतलब वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ वेरी टफ टू फाइंड कि 13 to 15% सस्टेनेबल वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ सिंस लास्ट 25 ईयर्स किसी इंडस्ट्री का रहा हो. तो यहाँ पे वो चीज एलिमेंट रहा है. बट एज यू राइटली पॉइंटेड कि 21 के अंदर क्या हुआ कि असीटोनिट्राइल और आपका जो DMF है उसका शॉर्टेज हो गया कंट्री में, एंड ओवर इन्वेंटराइजेशन हुआ. तो प्राइस असीटोनिट्राइल का 150 रुपए पर किलो से 280 to 90 रुपीज से लगा, विच इज नाउ बैक टू 160, 170.
Right.
And DMF also price went from 60 to 140. It's back to 80, 85 rupees today.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you see this amine sectors like going forward? Because दो amines वाले, एक का तो I think 60-70 भी अभी भी चल रहा है, तो might not be interesting. एक का तो शायद से अभी 10, 15, 16 के आसपास आ गए. So how do you particularly look at that second business? And also a link to this question is कि मतलब how do you see this industry evolving? क्योंकि अगर API वाले सब capex कर रहे हैं, API में revival आते हैं, तो इन लोगों में भी generally revival आना चाहिए, maybe after 2-3 quarters का break.
Fair. See, this is probably, I think, in my purview of my sector, this is probably one of the easiest proxies to find. I will tell you, there are so many advantages. It's a duopoly. Second, no one is going to, in their uh, truest senses going to think about getting into amines, because see, the thing you have to understand about amines is when it goes into a particular formulation, the percentage of amines in a formulation is not more than 5-7% at the max. At more than, like, it's 8-9% at the max. Otherwise it is just an enabler in any, like in chemicals, like we say catalyst. This is not a catalyst as such, but it is an enabler or an activator as such, wherein it helps to get all the different ingredients of a particular molecule together in a heterogeneous medium. That's what amines do. So they have a very basic function, but it is so essential that you cannot do without them. I mean, come what may, you cannot do without them. And again, amines chemistry being so basic in nature when it comes to aromatic chemistry, that you cannot substitute a particular chemistry. See, chemistry, what's happening? See, why do you think fluorine came into picture in just last 8 to 10 or 12 years? Because the thing started with chlorine. Chlorine was the key element in 1970s, 80s, 90s. There were no technologies to handle fluorine, or leave aside technologies. There was no research only on fluorine. Then people realized, okay, chlorine has so many harmful effects. So then it came to bromine. Bromine also, people realized that it is very, uh, you know, applicable only in a certain areas. It cannot be applicable in a wider spectrum like fluorine is today. And iodine, it's very difficult to handle iodine. So, that kind of research has got fluorine to the forefront. Nothing like that has happened in amine and can technically happen in amine, because it is so basic. It has carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. It is made of these three elements. These are the basic most elements which you cannot substitute when it comes to chemistry. So these are the kind of advantages that this industry has. So you said that every API player is doing capex, even CDMO players, CRAMS players, they are doing capex. A lot of small biotech companies are coming to India to make, to develop their R&D molecules into commercial molecules. You see all sorts of influx that's coming to India when it comes to pharma on a longer term scale. So obviously, this is one of the best proxies to play. Another thing that one of the companies is actually doing in the mine space is they are focusing a lot on import substitute as well, because the derivatives, the second order, third order derivatives of these tertiary and the secondary amines that they have, everything is being imported in the country. So one of the very big solvents that is used in the paint industry, one of these companies has completely import substituted, and it's close to almost 60 to 65,000 tons of import that India does of that particular solvent. So a lot of these guys now, because they have their primary, secondary, tertiary amine chain intact and supply chain is established, everything is established, they have so much time to actually focus on the newer derivatives again of amines, which is what their forte is, to just take more and more incremental wallet share from their customers. And Indian customers are now willingly giving it because they don't want to depend on China. So it's actually a dual tailwind for these companies and the sector as a whole.
तो एक जय भाई एडेड क्वेश्चन था इस पे, तो लाइक दिस कंपनी इज मेकिंग लाइक propylene glycol and dimethyl carbonate in India for the first time.
Yeah, propylene glycol
And
only. Yeah.
yeah, so how do you see the demand for these two products in India, और क्या इसका end usage है,
So
just so the audience understands better?
propylene glycol is universal solvent that is used in FMCG. It's used in your dermatology products. It's used in paints, inks, a lot of textile emulsions. So it is again a universal solvent. So there is huge demand for that, and there is no one in India who is actually doing that. In fact, even in China, only two companies used to majorly supply to India. So this company, and right now the capacity is very small, that what they have also done, because for them also it was kind of a proof of concept. So easily propylene glycol grows at not less than 8 to 10% a year, because now if you see one of the biggest users of the industry, the paint industry, there are at least three players, from a huge player to a mid-size to a small player, who are going to come in the industry. See, whoever wins the battle, none of us knows, but we surely know that there is going to be thousands of liters of more paint that is going to be manufactured in the country. So again, it's a great proxy. You just have to go and see how a paint is made, You can look at dispersions, you can look at pigments, you can look at additives, the resins, what all these guys use.
Right, right. And what about dimethyl carbonate?
So dimethyl carbonate is used as again in pharma it is used a lot, and again no one has made that till now. Dimethyl carbonate is also a precursor for a lot of electrolytes that will be used in the EV batteries. So that is another big potential that this company has seen, and they've started the manufacturing. Again, the thing that needs to be monitored here in case of this company is you need to see the product quality and the end result of when that product is used in that particular product, because sometimes if solvents are not of the right quality, your end product will always get hampered. So that is very important to monitor, because see, it's very tempting to just say that okay, we are doing import substitution, but at the same time quality is something that you can not take for granted. So that's again very important to look at when you track this company, both in terms of propylene glycol and dimethyl carbonate. You will have to keep checking that how their quality is, because it is also used in a lot of coatings, is used in making additives. So there are a lot of uses, but you need to see that whether it is able to match the quality standards of every end user.
Right, right. तो एक्चुअली बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं मल्टीपल थिंग्स पे, तो भी मतलब
ये सेक्टर ही ऐसा है
I'll
भाई.
keep asking. मतलब बाकी it's Sajal sir is also here, Prince is also here. Any questions, please feel free. So एक मतलब विद इन द केमिकल्स वी नो, बिकॉज वी आर जस्ट डिस्कसिंग अबाउट केमिकल्स. तो आजकल एक फर्स्ट टाइम आई थिंक अभी कल ही एक कॉन कॉल हुआ था उस कंपनी का, तो दो कंपनीज आर कमिंग इनटू दिस इलेक्ट्रोलाइट्स का वैल्यू चेन, राइट? तो एक तो पूरा इंटीग्रेट होके आ रही है, मतलब फ्लोरिनेशन भी कर रहे हैं, मतलब लिथियम तो बाहर से खरीद रहे हैं, एंड पूरा कॉम्प्लेक्स लगा रहे हैं. दूसरे वाली ने जापानीज कंपनी से आई थिंक देव डन सम टाई अप, मित्सुबिशी से.
मित्सु से, हाँ.
तो ये वाला इकोसिस्टम कैसे लग रहा है कि हाउ दिस इकोसिस्टम इज डेवलपिंग, एंड आल्सो लाइक इफ यू आर एबल टू आंसर दिस, व्हिच आई एम नॉट एबल टू राइट नाउ, इज दैट टिंकी बैटरी सॉल्यूशंस जो चाइनीज कंपनी है दैट इज डूइंग सम 40,000 करोड़ का रेवेन्यू, 40,000 करोड़ रेवेन्यू जस्ट फ्रॉम इलेक्ट्रोलाइट्स. एंड द ब्रोमीन कंपनी सेज, जो इंडिया वाली है, कि 18% ईबिटा मार्जिन बनेगा इसमें. Whereas the fluorine company says कि they'll do corporate level type EBITDA margins, which is I think well beyond of 30%. So I'm unable to understand कि यार अगर न्यू मतलब वो ब्रोमीन वाली कह रही है 18% बनेगा, दूसरी कह रही है 30% बनेगा. So what am I missing in this entire thing? And how do you think about this industry going forward as well?
Honestly, for this industry, I am just right now sitting in the fence and seeing what all developments are happening. Because I honestly feel that a lot of technologies will coexist. There's not going to be a single winner takes it all when it comes to EV batteries or electrolytes, because a lot of research is going on in sodium. A lot of research is going on in the way the cathodes and anodes are designed. Because if your cathode and anode design is completely changed, even the nature of electrolytes that flows through the cathode and anode and charging them, and the way it's being used, a lot of things will change, because depending on the metal that is used, depending on the nature of the ion that is used, even the electrolyte will need to be changed. So this is something where I am also continuously studying and talking to a lot of Chinese manufacturers, battery manufacturers. There is an Indian startup called Log9 Materials. I am in touch with them to understand what are the moving parts when it comes to the battery ecosystem. And it's as good as they are as clueless as us, because everyone is thinking that lithium is the future, but you never know. In another 6 months, someone will come up with a proof of concept where related to sodium. So if that changes, the electrolyte that blends well with lithium, it doesn't obviously blend well with sodium. So that you really need to wait and watch and see how the things are evolving over the next few quarters or maybe a year or two. I don't think there is any hurry to bet on the winning player right now, honestly.
To just like asking about the industry in general, because for the second player it might not even be like 5% of the capital employed.
Exactly, I know, I know.
So
So, and see, they are also, again, they, for them, because they are completely integrated, they are spread across the country, and the entire chain, and across the globe they have customers. They can.
Jay, I think we lost you. Ishmohit, can you hear him?
no, I can't.
Jay, if you could hear us, can you please check? Okay, yeah, right now I can.
Can you hear?
Yeah, right now we can. We missed some 20 odd
Okay.
seconds.
So yeah, I was saying that basically for the bromine company, like taking such a big step and saying that this might be the eventual technology that will work across EVs. I don't know whether that is a great thing. I mean, you can only tell in hindsight. But I think this is a space with a lot of moving parts. So it's better to wait and watch. Or if you can find a proxy to all of them, then I mean, yeah, that would be a great discovery.
Have you found any?
बताऊंगा बताऊंगा जल्दी.
So nice. So now like within the chemicals, अब एक दूसरे इंडस्ट्री में ही चलते हैं chemicals में, क्योंकि it's like sub segment within a segment. So now question on this latex industry and the NBR industry which is there in
Hmm.
India. So synthetic latex में I think two players have like 80% of the market share. एक unlisted में और एक listed
Yeah.
में. And NBR में there is only one player which is manufacturing in India. So for this latex player, so actually I'm just sharing an observation as well, and you can also like add points to this. कि निट्राइल लेटेक्स का इस कंपनी ने अभी कैपेसिटी लगाया है जो मेडिकल ग्लव्स में यूज होता है.
Hmm.
And those medical gloves are like so nitrile latex is sold in Malaysia, Indonesia,
Indonesia.
and वहाँ पे
Okay.
manufacturers
Yeah.
हैं क्योंकि रबर प्लांटेशन ईजी है वहाँ पे.
Hmm.
सो currently we've seen कि because of COVID there was a lot of supply which
Oversupply.
came into the industry.
Yeah.
And so we have like so we can go and read what happened during SARS because all these companies are listed जैसे टॉप ग्लव्स हो गई या कोई और हो गई. तो SARS टाइम पे भी यही हुआ था. But because medical gloves have a shelf life of 2 years, so they end up expiring after 2 years, right? So calendar year 21 के अंदर ये oversupply start हो रहे हैं, and all these companies from historic profits are now reporting historic losses,
Hmm.
and a lot of inefficient ones have started going bust. So this company which we are talking about जिसने अभी निट्राइल लेटेक्स का कैपेसिटी लगाया टू सप्लाई, तो इसका भी मोटा मोटा 4% ईबिटा मार्जिन बन रहा है आई थिंक इस बिजनेस में से, एंड दिस कुड बी लाइक 18-20% ऑन अ नॉर्मलाइज्ड बेसिस.
Hmm.
So how do you think about this capital cycle playing out कि हो सकता है 6 month का पेन है, but because पेन में ही वैल्यूएशन सही मिलती है, but beyond 6 month you can see that the company probably might end up doubling its top line.
Yeah, given the nature of capex they've done and the historical asset turns that the company has, it should be able to double the top line. But sometimes, again, what happens is a down cycle can also, extend for longer than anticipated. So, but given that, see, there are other application areas which is majorly auto and a lot of, OEMs. So that is something which is in huge demand. So if the company can actually try and get more of their sales as a percentage of sales, get more from the non-glove segment, they can actually set aside the losses or kind of the overhang that this synthetic latex has on them. But eventually, maybe in another, I think 4 to 5 quarters, they should be able to turn around because also what we need to see here is the rubber prices as well. If the rubber prices again keep on going higher, then even at a 40 or a 50% capacity utilization of the current capex done, they might be able to post those kind of numbers. But keeping in mind that let's say the rubber prices are just constant, I think you know they should be able to turn around in 3 to 4 quarters. At least 4 quarters is what I feel. But at the same time, I think they can try and get more share from their auto segment where a lot of their supplies goes into the auto and the footwear also. So if they can get more and more market share in those segments, I think they can offset the loss that they are doing. But yeah, I mean, the historical conduct of the promoters knowledge in the industry, everything is, A plus. So it's a great company, but yeah, caught in a bad down cycle again, made the same mistake, capex at the top of the cycle.
Right, right. But matlab, so again, it's like thinking from entrepreneur's point of view. So because you're in a B2B business, so when customers are demanding and they're willing to validate you like ASAP and you have the balance sheet strength, if you do not do the capex and someone else gets validated, so again that is also loss of market share just from an entrepreneur's point of view. Like if you think.
I agree, but the problem is the extrapolation of the demand and the time for which the demand will last is where I've seen a lot of guys make the mistakes, including the biggest benzene player in India has done that. So I think that is where some caution is warranted.
100% agreed, because as investors you have choice to look at it again after maybe two
Precisely,
three quarters.
precisely.
Right, right. सो लेटेक्स की तो बात हुई, कैपिटल साइकिल प्ले आउट कर रहा है अब. कमिंग टू अनदर इंडस्ट्री विच इज लाइक नीश ओनली, कंपनी का मार्केट कैप भी 1400-1500 करोड़ रहेगा, बट देव announced a capex which is even bigger than the net block currently and more than doubling capacities. So now I don't really know about the lubricant chemicals का कैसा demand है इंडिया में, and whether many companies are manufacturing this, because the company claims they'll do 20 to 23% EBITDA margins in 2 years and current corporate level EBITDA margins are 16-17%. So how do you think about this lubricant chemical space? Because I know you're from the industry, तो easily
I
मतलब पता होएगा ही.
I mean, there is a lot of organized plus organized unorganized guys in the sector. So I don't think there is any major right to win because there is nothing that can be patented in this sector unless it is supremely like special that the company is manufacturing. So I feel you would actually let the company post it for a 1-2 quarter and then assess it rather than just believing on what the management is saying because it is not something that has high entry barriers for sure.
Right, right. I think quite interesting. तो will be interesting to see कैसे जाता है.
Because see, what
Um,
happens is another thing
hmm,
that you need to realize is that for lubricants, there is not really a lot of multi-stage processing. All they do is get directly some sort of the petrochemical jelly and just kind of distill it, or they will do some addition to get the end product. There is not really a multi-stage processing and then there is the crystallization, drying or filtration where the product quality is literally depend on the kind of process and the kind of chemistry that you decide. It is not something like that. It's literally a first order derivative of a petrochemical jelly. So it's very important to see that what is the value addition that they are also doing. So if you can figure that out, that what is it that they are doing separately, just ask them what is it that they are doing separately till what they have done, because why is it 16, why is 16 going to 22?
right,
And you can ask them
right.
on the kind of capex or the equipment that they have got. So from that it is very to devise that what are they doing.
So just a follow-up question to for the entire audience, like if you were to rank the barriers to entry within this industry, because there's so many sub-segments. So how will you think about it? Like top 3-4 सब segments will you say कि मतलब you'll say कि यार ये तो करना बहुत ही मुश्किल है, मतलब कोई normal बंदा capital लेके नहीं कर सकता है. Like what will be those 3-4 sub segments? Because the question comes from the point is कि because chemical is a manufacturing business. So in manufacturing business, because जो incumbent होता है, if he has deployed a large amount of capital, so over a period of time, only because of economies of scale, he is able to make 20-25% ROCE.
Hmm.
Whereas a new player will take multiple years to get to his 20-25% ROC, और उतने टाइम तक उतना पैसा खराब करना सेंस नहीं बनता, तो वो एंट्री बैरियर बन जाता है. So what are some of these sub segments which you see for the benefit of the entire audience? How do you think about this sub segmentation of the industry in terms of barriers to entry?
So see, I think I don't know if you were there at the start of the session or no, but like I said, everything in chemicals start with either one of the two things. Either it's a benzene derivative or it's a phenol derivative. So, I mean, going back to the root, there are only two companies which will fit in this basket. That's Aarti and Deepak. So that's where the chain starts. After that, you'll have to go and check what is the kind of value addition or what is the kind of process that any subsequent company is doing after procuring these two things from the raw material guy. Is it like a 5 6 step process? Is it something that very difficult to handle? Let's say something like a fluorine, again, very difficult to handle as a element. So that is one thing where how you can see. Second thing, how you can rank a company is the amount of years spent by the company in, mastering that particular chemistry, like how we spoke about amines. So these two guys have been doing this chemistry for almost 30 35 years now. uh, Another way is also there is amine chemistry. There is a very small player based out of Dahej who's been doing phosphorus chemistry for 30 years, specifically for the crop protection and the agro industry, doing nothing else but only phosphorus and phosphorus derivatives and third order derivatives of phosphorus. So that is one way where, over the years you will gain scale, you will gain expertise, plus you will gain trust of your end customer, because they are so dependent on you for one particular chemistry and all the products that evolve from that chemistry. So that is another way to rank. So ek ho gaya where the chain starts. Second is handle the difficult element like a fluorine or something like an isocyanide. So again, only one company in the country can handle isocyanide at scale. Third thing is, like I said, that for how many years you spent in a particular chemistry, mastering the precursor, mastering the finished goods, mastering the monomers, mastering the catalysis, everything. So that is one way to rank, the companies. Hmm. And third, and I think one more way is, so one of the biggest agrochemical companies today is so big because of their ability to handle any kind of chemistry. So that is a completely different framework where your intellectual capital is so high that any innovator in the world will trust you that you can handle that particular chemistry or that particular product or molecule very well, irrespective of whatever it is. It is aromatic, aliphatic, it is liquid, solid, anything. So that is a completely different game where it is your intellectual capital that is making an entry barrier. I think these are the 3 4 ways where I generally see chemical companies.
Right, right. I think thank you so much for putting it that way. So I think काफी understanding increase होती है. So two more questions before I leave. तो two questions. एक तो है कि यार ये phenol वाला जो business है,
Hmm.
मतलब it's such a basic thing कि any petrochemical giant can just forward integrate and like set up a 5 lakh ton or a 1 million ton plant, and we have seen this happening all over the world. तो एक क्वेश्चन है इसमें क्या बैरियर टू एंट्री, कोई बैरियर टू एंट्री एग्जिस्ट करता है भी नहीं करता, बिकॉज इट्स जस्ट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ पुटिंग कैपिटल, राइट? एंड सेकंड क्वेश्चन इज ऑन रेफ्रिजरेंट गैसेस कि द गो टू मार्केट स्ट्रक्चर फॉर रेफ्रिजरेंट गैसेस इज सो कॉम्प्लिकेटेड कि सिर्फ 2 3 कंपनीज इंडिया के अंदर ये कर रही हैं. And there is also a market vacuum which exists in US because of anti-dumping duties on
China.
China. तो सेकंड वाले क्वेश्चन में क्या है कि डू यू सी दिस मार्केट वैक्यूम परसिस्टिंग फॉर नेक्स्ट 5 6 years, because some of these anti-dumping duties last till 2028 2029, and during that period of time these 3 companies can actually make elevated levels of profitability? And first question ye phenol wala for the benefit of the entire audience.
See, first question, when it comes to phenol, again, there is only one petrochemical giant in the country, first of all, who can do this. And looking at the way they are looking at D2C businesses, I don't think they are anywhere close to looking at entering phenol, although they always can. And I think, I mean, that will be a big risk for Deepak always. But apart from that,
But जय अगर 1,000 crore का कैश फ्लो आते तो why won't they look at it? मतलब वो तो
I think that's,
फूला तक बिजनेस
I
देख
think
रहे
the
हैं.
scale at which Reliance is looking at other businesses, I don't think 1,000 crores is any more big for them. So, I mean, see, they could have done this 15 years back, to be honest. They, like Deepak was very late in identifying the opportunity, but still they did it. because no one was doing it. So that risk will always play out, but I think Deepak has taken the risk and it has paid them handsomely. Now going ahead, what happens? Even they don't know, and I think it's very difficult for us also to analyze, because even at 2 lakh tons, there is still 3 to 4 lakh tons of demand that is still going to be there, which can. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Deepak will put up another plant, to be honest, because there is so much demand, and the way things are turning out, the way phenol derivatives are picking up pace in every other chemical industry, I think the demand is going to stay intact. So the player entering, not entering is anyone's guess. But yeah, till now no one has entered, so I don't know what has stopped people from entering. Because see, it is very risky also. So and today when you see, there are not more than 10, 15 family businesses or chemical companies who can handle such complicated chemistries. It's very difficult, because you, along with the right team, you need to know, you need to have the right know-how, the right technology, the right infra. It's not just only money that will solve a lot of problems in chemicals, I suggest. Because if that was the case, why are none of the top 5 Indian billionaires in any chemicals? Why is that the case? And all the leading companies you see are all founded by chemical engineers, or the entire board is chemical engineers. So it's a lot on skill also than money, is what I feel. Second, when you say about fluorine gases, I think there is certainly a vacuum, but I don't think the companies will do a majority of the capex now when it comes to ref gases. I think whatever capex or whatever capacity they have, they will be happy to serve all the void that has been created. Because see, what they are thinking is, this advantage is a geopolitical advantage. It is not a cost advantage or a scale advantage. So doing capex again on a geopolitical advantage is very risky. And I mean, I have spoken to some of them, and they said that, the pace at which sanctions are levied, you never know if things turn out to be okay. At the same pace, sanctions can be withdrawn also. And like I said, even in terms of sanctions, there is always a way that those products are going to find the end place, via circumspecting the particular route that everyone is tracking. They can always end up in the same place via some other route or third party, or I mean, so many ways. If you want, you can do that. So it is not something that they will look at a big thing or a big growth lever, but they'll certainly make hay while the sun shines, is what I feel. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if 100% of the capacity is exported. But I don't think going for capex in this particular sector just on the geopolitical sanctions would be a wise thing.
But I think, like, for just to add to your point, because phenol, like, all over the world there might be more than 100 manufacturers, and import तो easily हो जाता है. तो like you're right कि चार पांच petrochemical giant and no one has done it, so it's a market vacuum which has been
It
cornered.
has been,
But
and it has
second,
been there for close to 50 years. I mean,
right, am I audible?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
हाँ. But second, ref gases पे I think जो R32 का all three companies are putting up like capacities, because वो अगर आपका the other ones like R134 are being substituted by at least lesser greenhouse gas ones, that is R32. But yes, those cash flows can be used. But ref gases से ही linked question है R22 का, which is a ref gas which is primarily used for manufacturing fluoropolymers downstream.
Hmm.
So हाउ डू यू थिंक ये जो इंडियन प्लेयर्स में दो कंपनीज ने अभी आई थिंक मेजर कैपेसिटीज अनाउंस करी है, एक तो आई थिंक इज मच अहेड इन द गेम, सेकंड वन इज जस्ट रिसेंटली अनाउंस्ड आई थिंक 1500 करोड़ केपेक्स या 1300 करोड़ का फॉर एंटरिंग द फ्लोरोपॉलीमर स्पेस. तो इस मार्केट में क्या डिसरप्शन हो रहा है, एंड डू यू थिंक दिस इज अ कमोडिटी बिजनेस ऑफ फ्लोरोपॉलीमर्स, एंड इफ नॉट देन क्या इसमें मतलब सस्टेनेबल मार्जिन रह सकते हैं बियॉन्ड 30% ईबिटा?
Uh, See, margin is an outcome of the prices. Right now, the prices are elevated because of a lot of things. The Chinese sanctions, the capacity is not being there. The way fluoropolymers were made had to be changed. A lot of PFAS were not allowed to use, so a couple of companies got kicked out. That again created elevated margins for these companies. So it's a result of a lot of factors that these margins have climbed to these levels in the last 18 to 20 months. However, saying that, I don't think fluoropolymers is a very easy game, and I don't think there will be more than uh, 8 to 10 players globally at scale who will rule this industry. Like, because you said R22, like, I mean, it's basically the most balanced hydrofluorocarbon, like fluorodifluoromethane. It's the most balanced hydrofluorocarbon today that everyone thinks is around for all kinds of uses. Let's say in a ref gas or your FKDM or FPA, anything can be made very in a very safe manner using chlorodifluoromethane. But like you said, one of the Indian players who's very much ahead in the game is only because by I think November this year they will be completely able to go away from PFA, from the surfactants that are used in the manufacturing of all these fluoropolymers, and maybe by next year or early 2025, even Solvay will be in a good place to completely eliminate those banned surfactants. But over the time, I think, see, it's not whoever is there in the fluorine industry, especially the two players in India who are more focused on the monomers and the precursors, and the third player who is more interested in the agro and the pharma side. So whoever is there in the industry, eventually everyone will have access to the technology. Everyone will make the same kind of ref gases and similar, derivatives of fluoropolymers. So in 2 to 3 years, if you ask me, maybe these margins are sustainable. But in another 7 to 8 years, I think these 8 to 10 players, everyone will be at par. The Chinese players, US players, European players, and the Indian players. But then it will be a game of scale and backward integration, where I think one of the Indian players is in a very sweet spot.
Right. And they're well integrated, just like
Precisely.
straight from owning the fluorospar
Yeah.
mines.
तो मोरक्को से लेके दहेज तक सब उनका है.
राइट. तो वो जो सेकंड प्लेयर एंटर करने की अभी कोशिश कर रहा है, तो मतलब कोशिश किया तो वो एंटर कर ही गया Q1 of FY24 में plant goes live. So that is also like that company has also announced a 12-1500 crore capex, and because we know they have almost cash flow of 2500 crores per annum, so they'll keep announcing more and more capacities going forward. So how much time do you think it will
It's
take
not
them to
easy.
crack all these
I was
grades?
just gonna.
Is it like
No, it's not easy. I don't know. It will be a very fun story to watch out actually. So if you know, I don't know how fluoropolymers are used. Basically, they are micro powders. So a lot of, like, one of the, let's say, one of the very critical applications of these fluoro micro powders is when you see a aeroplane wheel, the bearings that you see in the wheel and the nut bolts that you see in the wheel, between the nut bolts and where it's stuck on the wheel, there are these micro powders that go of fluoropolymers, because the temperature is so high there, which it's not normal to your a pass car or a two wheeler that your wheel will go, your bearing will go on that nut bolt or something. The temperature is so high that this microfluoropolymers are something that will bind these things together even at the highest possible temperature. I mean, one of the advantages of fluoropolymers is basically high resistance to temperature. So, when the company that we're talking about is just starting to do the capex, whereas the established guy has done trials for six years with something like an Airbus or a Boeing to get into these kind of niches. There are a lot of niches actually. I'm just giving you one. If you just go on Google and see high quality applications of fluoropolymers, you'll come to know where all they are sitting in the supply chain. So it's not really going to be that easy. Obviously, the low hanging fruits can be fought by a price war, but where these guys are deep seated, it's not going to be very easy to displace them.
right. So basically, it's not a typical
No
commodity
way,
जहाँ पे
ना
जाके
ना
प्लांट
ना
लगाया
ना,
तो बेचना चालू कर
कोई
दिया.
चांस ही नहीं है.
Right. This is why their capex is taking time to ramp up, because they're saying we have like set up new grades and it will take 6 to 9 months of approval cycle to get them
Because
approved.
fluoropolymers, it's a highly sticky business, because the way it goes into semiconductors and everything, because your entire line depends then on that particular raw material. So if you are with a client which is a high quality application, I think it's very easy. It's very difficult to displace you.
Right. Right. So, Jay, bhai, before I take your leave, and thank you so much for answering all the questions
Anytime,
so
bro.
patiently. Hopefully, audience is also learning, and also to the audience, like whenever I want to learn about chemical industry, I just call Jay straight away because like he's a master of the industry. So, Jay, one more question now. Coming back to your
No,
our
this word is
agro.
just being very humble, guys. I'm not really a master of the industry. But yes, thank you, Ishmohit, so much.
No, no worries. So, Jack, coming back to your agro sector, and we've seen कि agro को आप divide कर सकते हो कि एक technical grade manufacturer है.
Hmm.
Then there are companies which are into patented CRAMs which are providing to innovators. Then there are companies who are into generic formulations, and then there are only intermediate suppliers.
Yes.
So, just for the benefit of for the entire retail audience on the platform, is that some of these sectors are like really highly cyclical. जो इंडस्ट्री वाले हैं वो भी नहीं बता सकते यार अगले क्वार्टर में इसके प्राइस क्या होने वाले हैं, चाइना से सप्लाई आएगी या नहीं आएगी. So how will you sub segment this segment this sector of agrochem, and जो retail investors है generally you are not able to track like each and every pricing of chemical. जैसे propiconazole का कौन price track
Hmm.
करेगा, right? तो how is there any mental framework which they should follow कि यार ये वाले business models are safer, so maybe you should sort of study these business models more if you're going towards more cyclical business models. So maybe you have to be more valuation focused or maybe mix valuations with technicals whenever a stage to breakout happens. So how to sub segment the entire thing so that कि कहीं हम एक cyclical business को structural बोल के peak cycle पे कोई retail investor उसके अंदर invest ना करे just for the sake of the audience.
So, see, I think as an investor, if you want to invest in the agrochemical sector, I would say uh, you do please do not go down till the formulator or the distributor, because that is just pure play, low quality, no entry barrier business. A lot of you might have seen one company which keeps trading at 7 to 8 times earnings, and there is never a re-rating because it is a low or no entry barrier business. So I think that is very important to recognize. Second thing, as an investor, I would say at least go in the section where the company is making the technicals or the intermediates. See, that itself also can be very cyclical in nature, but what will save you there is that cyclicality or the price rise or the price fall on either side, basically an upcycle or a down cycle, will be limited to a few quarters. And at least these guys have contracts from the international guys, which are always honored, like in most cases, unless there is some major issue. Otherwise, these contracts are always honored. They have a fixed cost mechanism, like either it's a cost plus mechanism or a cost pass through mechanism that is enforced in the contracts. Another thing to insulate yourself more when you go to a technical guy or a intermediate guy, try and see a couple of things. One, the amount of raw material it imports. Second, the level of backward integration that the company has, that can be easily asked on a con call, and it can be verified also. Just go to Google and see how a molecule is made, and when you ask them that आप ये कहाँ से लेते हो, I mean, either they will tell you the truth or they'll lie. Then if they tell you the truth, it's easy to see, just how many assets they have, or what is their asset turn, or what is their return on capital employed. You can actually correlate those things and find out ki, okay, is this guy lying or no. So when you have backward integration, low dependence on China, what can happen is, see, what happens is then when the things are in your favor, like when the prices are rising, you can always pass through because your contract has that enforced. But what happens when the prices fall is, at least you know that you can insulate yourself, because then your raw material is in your control, your intermediate is in your control. Only thing where you will take a hit in the very short term is the margin hit and the EBITDA hit, which will be for a few quarters, because eventually after 2 or 3 quarters, the price will stabilize either at a lower level or the downward level. So even if it stabilizes at the lower level, then it's, your raw material prices are in your control. So again, you can come back to a basic standard. So this is very important to see how much is the backward integration. Third thing, and very important, is to see how many geographies are they present in. Like Europe itself, it cannot be a geography. You have to see in how many countries they are able to supply, how many MNCs are their clients. apart from Europe? Are they in Australia? Are they in Latam? Because then what happens is, see, the amount of geographies they go to, that means they can serve, like जैसे इंडिया में रबी और खरीफ होता है, तो that similarly in more geographies they can then serve your pulses, then they can serve your cereals, they can serve vegetables, they can serve fruits. So then what happens is your end customer mix is also diversified. So that is another way to insulate yourself from the vagaries of the market or the vagaries of the climate or vagaries of the geographical tensions. A lot of vagaries are there. So that is one way to insulate. So I think these are the 3-4 factors that you need to keep in mind when you are looking at a technical or an intermediate manufacturer. I think going down the formulation and just the distributor route is not worth, is what I feel in this sector. Because then it is purely कि तुम कितने distributor appoint कर सकते हो, तुम कितने stockist appoint कर सकते हो. I don't think that is great use of capital.
Right, right. And one of the companies you mentioned in the beginning is in stage 4 since IPO only.
Exactly.
Right. And also the one of the formulators from Tata Group. The
वो
funny
तो
thing is like
क्या कर
that
रहा है
one never
भगवान
ran.
जाने 10 साल से. उसके
Right.
नाम में रैली है मगर
So
कर नहीं रहा.
how would do downside rally basically? Right. So thank you so much, Jay, for answering the questions, and
Most
thank you,
welcome.
Prince, for giving me the opportunity. So I'll just take your leave.
Thank you, Ishmohit. Sajal sir, thank you for waiting so patiently. So, any comments on the ongoing discussion or any question to Jay from your side?
Yeah, hi Jay, hi everyone,
Hi
hi
Sajal bhai.
Prince Ishmohit. I've been listening and I've been absorbing all the wisdom and the domain expertise. ज्ञान बट रहा है तो मैं भी बटोरने आ गया. So that is my sole purpose. But I would like to just pick up from where Jay and Ishmohit just left on that. नाम में रैली है फिर भी चलता नहीं है. I have my 2 cents. On Rallis India, the way I see it as on today, and it's been a learning for everyone, including yours truly. There is a fundamental difference between the business models of PI Industries and Rallis. Fundamental difference. So Rallis is in India, and Rallis has been attempting to ramp up the CRAM segment. For as far as I know, at least the last 7 years, maybe 8 years, if not longer. And yet they have not seen any traction in the CRAM space compared to players like, forget PI Industries, even if I take the Heikel as an example, right? They have not been able to ramp up the CRAM space on the agro side or the wider specialty chemicals. To my knowledge, the fundamental reason is that innovator will not be comfortable for 2 reasons. A, you don't have the focus on the CRAM side. You're not prepared to put capacities up front and then invite innovators for your plant inspection, something like the pharma players do all the time. Whether it's Syngene, whether it's Laurus, they put capacities up front. Rallis hasn't done that. And then so that's one thing. But is that the only reason? Probably not, because I think the other reason is there is a lack of focus and commitment on growing the B2B innovator synthesis space. They are well diversified into not just agrochemicals. They've also got seeds business, and they also have got this biopesticide business as well. So they've got 2 3 pots, and the focus is diluted. And innovators, they look at all of that, and that there is lack of focus. These guys also having their own IP. I know PI Industries has also got branded formulations business in India, but somehow they've been able to convince the innovators that their IP is secure and protected with PI Industries. Um, and the ramp up is clearly visible in the cash flows and the numbers and all the rest of it. Uh, I agree that the current valuations of PI, I'm not comfortable with the current valuations of PI industries as things stand today, and I've been vocal about this. The stock is not cheap, and this is the nature of the markets, that whatever starts working out or playing out, then markets just take it to the extreme level. So take DVs as an example. In 2021, the valuations of DVs were through the roof, and market was not acknowledging the fact that a large part of it is in the is the one of COVID drug segment. Likewise, if everything is going hunky dory for PI industries, market will give it a very high multiple, because everything is going on well. But on the realist side, because nothing has been working, the multiple also has compressed. And I think so. These are the two, three reasons. A, unwillingness to put capacities upfront. That's one. Two, lack of focus in ramping up the CRAM space. Three is maybe the innovators are not comfortable parting with their intellectual property, where the group's focus is also on creating their own brands, because they must be competing with a lot of these MNCs in India, if not overseas. So these are the three, four reasons which I believe are the fundamental and more of an structural headwind for Rallis. But I know Ishmohit and Jay, they understand this space far, far better than I do. So maybe I would invite their comments as well.
So, sir, like Jay dropped for 5 minutes. He got some urgent call from the family. So, meanwhile, Ishmohit and Aman can continue with the discussion. He'll be joining shortly again.
Right. Hi Sajal sir, hope you're doing well. तो अभी सर मतलब यू आर टोटली करेक्ट, मतलब यू हिट द नेल ऑन द हेड कि देयर इज अ लैक ऑफ फोकस एंड ऑल्सो फॉर पीआई's केस दे इन लाइसेंस अ लॉट ऑफ मॉलिक्यूल्स जो डोमेस्टिक फॉर्मुलेशंस में बेचते हैं, तो वो एमएनसी पार्टनर्स से ही इन लाइसेंस करके यहाँ पे बेच रहे हैं एंड लाइक रैलीज बिकॉज इट्स एक्सपोर्टिंग फॉर्मुलेशन, सो यू आर डायरेक्टली यू एंड अप competing with some of your probable customers. Whereas for PI, because वो फॉर्मुलेशन कभी एक्सपोर्ट नहीं करेगा सर, वो मतलब he'll just export the CRAMS products. तो वो है, बट राइटली सेड सर कि आज पीआई के केस में सो जस्ट राइट, सो पीआई के केस में जस्ट ऑन दिस कॉल ओनली, तो नाउ स्ट्रीट इज वरीड लाइक विद व्हाट हैपेंड विद डीवीज वाज कि Molnupiravir became a large chunk of the business. Similarly for PI, because we read all these brokerage reports, so pyroxasulfone has become a huge chunk of the business. Like 50-55% of exports are coming from one molecule, and that is what probably now street has started doing x of like kumai business kitna growth aa raha hai isme. So that is always the worries even in crams ki when one molecule becomes a large chunk or concentrated piece of the revenues, so people start seeing x of it, because what if the growth tapers from that? So that is always a worry with even crams business का inbuilt risk. That is that जैसे सुवेन के केस में अब 4 मॉलिक्यूल थे आपके, उसमें से 3 are going to expire in next 2 years, मतलब they'll go off patent. So how do you think about the terminal value? So अभी pipeline का आइडिया नहीं है, पहले देते थे अब दे नहीं रहे, तो उस सिनेरियो में भी that is a risk with basically contract manufacturing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, long story short, I've given up on Rallis because, see, the patience has to be finite, and you cannot just keep holding on to something forever. So, I've got pretty much no exposure on Rallis, as a disclaimer, and because I analyze the situation that it's just a game of waiting indefinitely, and even then, when my thesis is not playing out on the CRAM side. See, my sole focus is on the innovator synthesis. Even on the chemical side, I'm more interested on the API spaces, and then within API, I'm more interested on the CRAMS innovator synthesis, innovator CDMO, NC CDMO side of things. I'm generally not comfortable playing the generics or the commodity side of the API. So for that reason, I thought maybe I, I may just take money off Rallis, free up that capital, because um, and Aztec was also there last year in November. I made that disclosure openly that I wasn't comfortable with the valuations of Aztec, and I sold this. That, and maybe in hindsight that was brilliant timing, because the price was somewhere in the region of 2200 odd back then, around Diwali time last year, right? So I was cleaning up my portfolio back end of last year, because I was anticipating some sort of correction, and I was looking to add to my weightage on the API side, because the valuations were dirt cheap there, because there was so much disbelief and pessimism that nothing nothing can go right on the API space. And typically what we have seen historically is that those are the points where you need to strike when the street is in a in a mode of disbelief that nothing can work in a particular space. And this happens across sectors. It happens like a musical chair in rotation, and street will pick one, two, or three sectors where the disbelief is on the extreme, and also the optimism is also is on the extreme in certain pockets. So again, API is in space in 2020, 2021, the beginning of 2021. The optimism was also on the other side. So from deep optimism, the API space went into deep pessimism, um, and then you have to kind of try and act rationally on either side of that pendulum. So that was my intention, and I added to my holdings on the API side, and I was cleaning up on the chemical side. I reduced a lot of exposure on the chemicals, and unfortunately Rallis was one of the victim of that of that cleanup that happened. So that's a very clear disclaimer. So I see Jay is back. So
Yeah, Dev, sir.
yeah, hi. So one question that I had for you, Jay, is because my vested interest is more on the API side and chemicals as an input raw material for them. One intermediate that keeps bothering me a lot, and there is a heavy usage of that intermediate on the pharmaceutical side, and yet the import substitution hasn't played out. So we have seen over the years, and I'm talking about last 6-7 years, lot of import substitution has happened. So players like SRF, Atul, all of them have done one way or the other a large part of the import substitution, and a lot of intermediates that were not being manufactured in India started getting manufactured in the country locally, just to de-risk India from China or otherwise supply security. But one intermediate on the pharmaceutical side, which goes into API, metformin intermediate called DCDA, no player in India is manufacturing that. So I just wanted to understand why it is incredibly difficult. What sort of challenges are there that none of the chemical companies have been able to uh, take advantage of this clear gap, because as far as I know, 99%, if not 100%, is being imported, this DCTA.
Yeah.
What are the reasons?
So, what happened to Sajal bhai when you talk about dicyanodiamide, basically DCDA? If you go to see,
Yes.
first of all, there are only 6 to 7 manufacturers of it in the world. Out of that, 5 of them are in China. So, what happens? See, import substitution is generally done by majority the people who have control over either the raw material or the catalyst or the chemistry itself. Like you mentioned SRF and you mentioned a couple of other guys. If you see, these guys either had the raw material, or they either had the right equipment, or they knew the chemical, as such, the chemistry as such. The problem with DCDA is, see, DCDA, the manufacturing itself is so complex. It's involves a lot of processes. It involves nitrogen hydrolysis, then there is carbon dioxide that is formed in the process. Usko decalcify karna padta hai. Then there is a cyanamide that is made, usko polymerize karna padta hai. So there are a lot of different chemistries, different process expertise that you need to have to make something like this. Whereas in India, if you see, when I mentioned during the space that there are only 10 players, out of that 10 players, you will be very easily able to bucket them. One is a benzene expert, one is a phenol expert, two are amines experts, three are fluorine experts. But you find me one chemistry player who can do 10 chemistries under the same roof at scale. Because see, DCDA is again a very complex molecule and it is only feasible at scale. You cannot afford to make sub 100 or 500 tons. You need a 10,000 ton a month plant kind of a scale to make DCDA. That's why all the five plants are in China. So when you say import substitute, it is a blend of a lot of things. When any product is decided by a company. So, in fact, I am not sure if you are aware, but Balaji Amines tried something to make, which is very much similar in functionality to DCDA. However, that also did not work. It's called basically dimethylamine hydrochloride, DMHCl. It does serve a lot of things that DCDA does, but they tried out their trials with DVs, Red Ds, everywhere they failed. Because like I said, first of all, having 4 or 5 reaction slash process expertise in one particular product, big scale. So it is two things that need to come together for something like this. So I think this is one of the reasons why something like DCDA has never been able to make in India. Plus the pollution levels
No, I
of
think that,
DCDA are
yeah,
huge. So if you,
correct,
yeah,
correct.
so the thing is there is no compliance. First of all, in China, these 5 companies could survive because in the last 10 years there was no compliance that was as strict as which is today. So DCDA, another thing is because it's so polluting that companies, see, we have to think from their point of view also, that when they look at a product, they will be like, कितना पैसा लगेगा, हमारे पास कौन सा केमिस्ट्री है, हमारे पास कौन सा टेक्नोलॉजी है, pollution कितना होएगा. Because even today, even chemical guys are scared of putting up a plant because the environmental compliances and the norms are so high that it's really challenging a lot of entrepreneurs to see that whether this product will be feasible even in 3 years or no, because the cost has gone up so much.
So
Right.
sorry, just to add one question over here. So you talked about pollution and stuff. So there is one company which is in this chlorination value chain, right? So which is owned by the Shroffs, and that company hasn't been getting environmental clearance for 6 years now, almost, because वो जो एक Albara district है गुजरात में, if I don't know if I'm getting the
Ah,
pronunciation right, that's a red
yes.
zone. What's the pronunciation if I'm not
हाँ,
mistaken, right?
इकल बरा.
Equal. So, how do you think about such chemistries? Even though they are going to launch now 19 new products, but they'll again source for a
See, first
greenfield
of all,
site. यहाँ पे-
if you've really followed them closely, out of the 19 products, they are only not sure कि 10-11 product चलेंगे, 15 चलेंगे या 5 चलेंगे. 19 is a basket approach. Second, allyl chloride is what the chemistry that the company you are speaking does. So first of all, like I said, chlorination itself is becoming more and more redundant in terms of the end application. Wherever fluorine is able to do the needful, people are switching to fluorine purely because of chlorination problems and the pollution. And yeah, because chlorine is such a polluting element, it's very difficult for them now to get an environmental clearance. So now if you see what's happening in Dahej also, you are not getting the land at a price which can be feasible to run a factory because it's become so expensive. So now they are coming up with orange zones, green zones, red zones, like they are trying to push chemical companies as far as possible from the mainland. Can you hear now?
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for the answer. Sajal sir, like whatever, sir, really sorry,
So
whatever questions
chloride
you have.
basically, Ishmohit, I would just tell that keep in mind that where uh, the chloride chemistry that they are doing where eventually their end use is going to be. And if that end use can be substituted by another element or another molecule or another product or chemistry, they will be highly susceptible to that substitution, because now either the end user nor the manufacturer wants to deal with the hazardous chemicals. It's as simple as that.
Right, makes sense, makes sense.
Yeah, Prince, I think you
Sajal
can.
sir?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Prince.
So, Jay, I mean, do you see? I mean, that, are there any emerging technologies or innovations within the chemical sector that investors should be aware of, and how do they influence their market dynamics in the sense?
Mm, so there is a very big shift that's happening actually across the sector, irrespective of whatever kind of chemistry or company you are. Is basically they are all moving from batch processes to continuous process. See, batch process, it becomes very expensive. There are a lot of problems when it comes to scale. So there is something which is called the continuous flow reactor, which is part of the continuous chemistry that we are talking about. So it's nothing that it's like just that. So the difference between batch is that you make one thing in a particular reactor, you will take it out, then you will put it in another reactor, then you will take it out, etc. It's as simple as the name goes. That is the batch thing. Versus continuous. C, A say B, B say C, C say D is what happens in continuous. Just making it very easy for everyone to understand. So what happens is when from batch you take a pause every time, there are chances that that product the yield might go down. The ratio of it's called the stoichiometry ratio, sometimes that can change between the two processes sometimes. However, in continuous, what happens is it can first of all give you continuous process, so it reduces time, it reduces downtime between the two processes. Secondly, it's very easy to monitor in a continuous process, that is the reaction going as planned. Are the ratios of the monomer reacting in the whatever calculation that they had done? Are the monomers reacting in the anticipated way? So a lot of things are advantages in continuous flow systems, but see, the shift is very difficult because it is a new technology that everyone is doing. So it might take some years. First, people. So a lot of, I mean, there are a couple of companies who've already shifted. So they might have the first more advantage, at least in their molecules and their processes. But eventually, I think this is something that no one will be able to shy away from. Everyone who wants to compete at the highest level will have to shift to continuous flow as a process of manufacturing. Second thing, and an interesting thing that is happening, but which can, I don't think it is applicable across the spectrum, but so there are a lot of reactions where you need mild level of heat, not very high level, mild to some ambient levels of heat. And that can be, so that instead of power, a lot of companies are using something called as photochlorination, basically using artificial sources of light to control the temperature rather than using your steam or something. However, it can be done at a very specific molecular level or in some molecular chemistry only. But yeah, in that particular reaction, it can help you save your power and steam cost if you can use that light source properly. And that will give you actually a very high yield, because you are able to control the temperature, which is one of the most critical things in a reaction. You are able to temperature control your reaction, very precisely. So photochlorination is something that a couple of companies are trying, like Deepak, Anupam, and Ami Organics. These three are trying for sure. I'm not sure if any other ones are trying, but these three guys are trying something called photochlorination. So that is another chemistry that might evolve. Other than that, I think the only thing that all of you have to be aware about is the compliance that is coming for the entire sector. So I think effluent treatment is something now that is inevitable.
Right, Jay. And there is one question from Pramesh. What is the scope of
Just before, Yeah, just before we take that question, Jay, what role you think biotechnology and enzymatic synthesis could play in future? Because there are a lot of if you look at the entire chemical synthesis value chain, a lot of the backend is still being derived from this crude, or the crude oil, or the fossil fuel based derivatives, and raw material, and a lot of that um, creates a lot of pollution. And crude, as we know, has got a limited, we haven't, at some point the world will run out of it. Um, Plus the fact that it's not environmentally, there's a lot of greenhouse emission and on all the rest of it as well. So what role you think biotechnology and enzymatic synthesis can play in future in replacing a lot of this backend, make it more sustainable, make it more green, and do it at a scale and a price point where it becomes a no brainer? Because doing something on a sustainable green basis is not good enough if the cost is not palatable. So you need to do both the cost, the compliance, and the quality. Is Do you see that happening, maybe not next year, but over a period of time? Is that kind of an emerging possibility?
So I think Sajal bhai, you gave your answer in your last two lines. But I think I, like you, am a firm believer that biotech and green chemistry is the future. But again, at scale right now, enzymatic plays are difficult because they are not giving that kind of yield. We still don't have the right enzyme extracts for a lot of processes across industries that have to be like really particular in giving you the end result. But I think it's not difficult to get that. It's a matter of studying, getting more new cultures, originated in the lab. So enzyme cultures are being developed for a lot of end users. So enzymes will eventually be used in a lot of places. At least they are being used in food and pharma a lot for things like textiles. Also, they are used in the preliminary treatment. But and coming to the green chemistry and biotech, I think this is something that will take over eventually. For example, let's say the RCM division of Praj. I think they are doing some brilliant work there. So, like they have developed ethanol, which is completely not derived from fossil fuel, and it can be derived from a lot of other sources. But again, the two things, I think at least in RCM division, they know that it has to be commercially equally competitive there, like any other fossil fuel derivative. So that is happening at least in the RCM division of Praj. But the problem there is the scale and availability pan India, logistics related to that, having the right supply guys at the right centers. A lot of the ecosystem around that Sajalbhai needs to be developed first. It's like प्रोडक्ट तो बना लिया मगर सबके पास पहुंचाना है तो इट्स एट दैट स्टेज so a lot of things are evolving like technology. Like if you see enzymatic technology 10 years back, matlab there used to be only novozymes which used to rule the roost. Today a lot of guys even in the Indian subcontext like Rosari are trying a lot of enzymatic derivatives, and they are working. See, they are working at a, you can say, not a pilot scale, but they are working at a 100 200 ton 300 ton scale. When it goes to 3 lakh tons, their efficiency comes into picture. So I think it is a matter of time. And same for biotech. A lot of the solvents, a lot of catalysts will be green in nature. I mean, one of the companies in the country, Clean Science, they are doing a lot of green chemistry. So I think that will give you a much higher ESG score also when you will pitch yourself to customers globally. So there are a lot of win-wins to pursue biotech, enzymes, green chemistry, etc. But I feel it's an evolving landscape. I mean, a lot of things will happen before something is established as the standard operating procedure.
Absolutely, absolutely, and on the globally, I mean, I track 2 3 companies very closely. BASF, traditionally a chemistry champion, right? Across different segments, it's a behemoth in chemical science, and they have started embracing and scaling up biotechnology big time.
Yes.
BASF is very, very bullish, ultra bullish on biotechnology going forward, and that's not surprising because they embrace science, and if science is kind of guiding them towards biotechnology, they won't shy away from that. So BASF, definitely, I would encourage you guys to just keep that company on the radar, just for knowledge and understanding more than anything. And the other one is the Novozyme. I mean, the kind of
Yeah.
new pathways that they are creating on the biosciences. I mean, it's a clear they have been the leader, and I don't see that changing over the next several decades. So these two companies, then of course there are others as well, but globally there is a lot of traction that I see on the biosciences biotechnology space.
Right. Right.
Hopefully, Indians will also do a catch up, maybe, over the next 5 7 years. As Jay also mentioned, that good things. I mean, typically they take time. India has got its own challenges. I mean, there is a whole ecosystem which is weak and relatively fragile if you compare that to the global. Right? We haven't got that kind of an ecosystem in terms of the academia and the level of scientific talent that we need to scale things up pretty rapidly. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Absolutely. I think so. So the problem is settled by it's like India is fighting two battles. So let's say, like, if you are an API player today till date, you were getting most of your even the KSMs you were importing. Today, at least, India has woken up and started thinking ki we will start making our intermediates, we will start making our KSM. Now, at the same time, see, they will start making intermediates and KSM because that chemistry, that process flow, that material science, everything is established, all the calculations are established, so they can cling to something and at least start making that. However, if you tell the entrepreneurs at the same time to fight another battle कि मैं तुम KSM भी तुम renewables से बनाओ या तुम bio से बनाओ, so it is going to take time. Once they establish a process line, then they will be like, okay, now we can try and switch from a fossil fuel based ethyl alcohol to a biofuel based ethyl alcohol, but first we need that entire line in our control.
Exactly, exactly. So the initial steps, the baby steps, take a lot of time, but then the scale up, the next level of scale up happens. It's just like power of compounding. You don't feel
True.
it for the first 10 15 years, but then when it starts playing out, it kind of kills all the other investment big time. So yeah, and I think something of that sort should also play out eventually on the biotechnology side.
Fair, 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 fair. I agree.
Sorry, Prince, you can carry on.
Okay. So Pramesh got one question there. He's asking what is the scope of nano urea, because few names like Coromandel, Megmani have committed to investment in that space. Any views on that
Yeah,
space?
so see, nano urea has as huge a scope as urea. Basically, what the Indian government is trying to do is just try to reduce the amount of solid that is made. Instead, if nano urea, like it's basically 100 kgs can be substituted by 100 ml. It's as simple as that. There is nothing more to be thought about nano urea. Like if you are using 100 kg urea, the same thing can be done in 100 ml of that liquid nano urea. That's it. So what happens is you will save so much on logistics, you save on subsidy, a lot of things will be saved on. So nano urea is something that is inevitable, and the technology is proven, the effects are proven, everything is there. Currently, only IFCO has the technology. I think Coromandel has started investing. IFCO is giving to RCF and FACT right now only. But yeah, I mean, eventually once it's tried at a state level, all the projects are done, there will be a pan India rollout in the few years. So nano urea is something that's coming. I mean, it's proven. So
Right. So Shiva got one question. He's asking, what's your view on enhanced use of ammonia as most expediently coolant?
see again, the when it comes to cooling, a lot of things have to be kept in mind because where is your, like, are you using it in automobiles? Are you using it in HVAC systems? Are you using it in a chiller plant assembly? Where you use it is very important than what you use it and how you use it. So in chemicals, application is something that you have to keep in mind, and then you can choose your monomer basically, or the reactant that you so ammonia cannot be replaced everywhere and anywhere. Ammonia is something that has certain properties, and those properties can only be used in a certain environment. So yeah, it can be used as a but it needs a high temperature and pressure control environment if you want to use ammonia. Also, ammonia in its nascent form is very hazardous, so you need the right set of equipments, right set of expertise to even stabilize it, to use it in a certain environment. So see, these kind of things are again very focused and specialized. These things at scale are a completely different equation, and in lab is a very different equation. So you need to realize that where is the end use.
Right. And like, although you talked about the supply chain disruption thing, but again, how do you, I mean, the supply chain disruptions such as caused by COVID-19 pandemic? So any other, COVID was one of an event, right? But apart from that, do you see any, the investors need to be cautious when it comes to supply chain disruptions in the space?
So I think what has happened, you see, a lot of the supply chains have eased out. Things have come back to normal. Uh, See, a way to look at chemicals in terms of supply chain disruption is more than, the actual aspects of the supply chain. It has There has been a specific change on the human side of the, how we use the supply chain. People now want to de-risk themselves, trust a country other than China. It is those kind of factors, like someone who will honor the commitment, the shipment given at a specific price, who would honor the contracts. They want they want a change in the partner. They don't want. It's not only a price war. See, if it's a price war, if China is back to normalcy, boss, then most of the Indian guys should again be posting losses. But it's not like that. A lot of the Indian guys are obviously, apart from matching the price, it's more like now people want to do business with genuine, hardworking, and who would stick to the rule books type of people. And obviously they want to de-risk themselves at the same time, because now they've realized that India actually can be a legitimate supply chain component, which pre-COVID no one used to think like that of us. We were always a second fiddle. Today, a lot of places, China is the second fiddle, and in some places, India is like the first. India has the first right to refusal. Indian companies. So it's don't only look at कि China plus one या Europe plus one. ऐसे नहीं है. There are a lot of changes that happened during COVID, and a lot of things have been restored back to normal, like completely normal. But now people who are looking at 10 years of business, if you are offering at 30 rupees and China is offering at 30 rupees, they want to prefer you. It is not that you are giving them for free or you are giving them 5 rupees cheaper or something. They are just preferring you for a lot of factors that I mentioned, which are non-commercial in nature.
Right, Jay. So, Jay, basically, I mean, our attendees, those who have done their homework, should get something from the session. Obviously, apart from learning the nitty gritties. So, any good pockets where valuation at this point in time, without naming the company, if you want to discuss?
See, I would say the entire sector is coming back to normalcy. What you will have to check is, see, now in the next few quarters, how are the volumes picking up. There were a lot of plays that people could have harped upon if you kept your eyes and ears open. There is a company which only makes a couple of chemicals, but they are all used in the infrastructure industry. It was available very cheap. That company had another division of contract manufacturing. They were so much in demand, their products are so much in demand that they preponed their capex by 2 quarters. So a lot of companies are there who are either benefiting domestically, or like I and Ishmohit, we spoke, a lot of them are benefiting globally, who are in the fluorine supply chain. Again, like if you have the patience to hold The other Amine stories is a no-brainer. Maybe you might not be able to time the bottom. I mean, no one can. But yeah, like you can at least start reading about them, start building the positions. If just track their con calls, how the volumes are picking up, learn from the pharma companies, learn from the API companies. What are they saying? When will be they back to normal? Look at how I spoke to you about how to look at intermediates in the agrochemical space who are backward integrated. Agrochemicals, you go and see, you read UPL's con calls. They are like for the longer term, at least next 5 to 7 years, there is a huge demand from the Indian guys because again, people want to have better contract manufacturers. It's no more about cheap procurement only. Cheap procurement is one of the factors. Earlier, it used to get probably 99% weightage. Today, it has come down to 80-85%. People want trust, morality, good partners, a lot of things. So I think the overall the space has come back to normal, or maybe a quarter or 2 year. Destocking is almost getting over, inventory is almost getting over. But again, the caution is that don't expect 2021 kind of growth. That's not coming back in 1 year. You'll have to keep a 7 year, 10 year view now.
And how does the macroeconomic environment, such as interest rate, currency fluctuation, impact the chemical sector?
I mean, the biggest factor affecting in macros affecting the chemical sector is crude. So, I mean, you will have to see how much dependence does a company have directly, indirectly on crude. How much of their raw materials are they completely from crude, derived from crude? Are they at least domestically procured? Are they procured internationally? Is everything imported? So, a lot of those factors you'll have to keep in mind. The freight rates, the supply chains. So otherwise, I mean, it's all almost the same factors that affect any Indian markets or sectors, at least interest rates and all, which will affect the chemical sector also.
Right. So, Jay, I have taken the questions from the comments. So, Ishmohit and Sajal sir, in case you have any more inputs or maybe questions to Jay, we can take. Otherwise, we can call it for today.
No, I've got nothing more to ask or add. It's been an incredibly well controlled space. A lot of inputs kindly shared by Jay, which I was not aware of, and Ishmohit's initial questions when I joined, they also held my understanding. So I'm really grateful for all the time and the participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Ishmohit, your end?
So I'll just add to Jazz like conclusion. So I think the way to play chemical industry, one of the ways is to just identify concentrated profit pools. हो सकता है आज ओवर अर्निंग हो सकता है 2-3 क्वार्टर में ओवर अर्निंग सारी निकल जाए, but make sure that your homework is done right, because you know only God and a liar can time the bottom. But if your homework is done right, 3 years में इन सबका जो ग्रॉस ब्लॉक है ना, कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन जो बैलेंस शीट पे, दैट इज गोइंग टू डबल प्रॉब्ली नेक्स्ट 2 years ओनली. तो अप साइकिल में पैसा बन जाएगा अगर कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड प्रॉफिट पूल्स में जा रहे हो. एंड दिस इज द टाइम यू डू योर होमवर्क, सी, because you have to think in terms of 2 years, 3 years, so might be a bit difficult for for investors to think about it that way. But I think that is the way to play it from here. मतलब it's not कि वो 2 क्वार्टर में 50-60% पैड ग्रोथ आई, स्टॉक 4x हो गया, वो वाला गेम गया बेसिकली. So how the cycle moves, we have to move along with that, and this is how you have to prepare for your homework from here. So thank you so much, Jay, and
Most
thank you so
welcome,
much,
bro.
Sajal sir.
Thank you. So two interesting question I got, Jay. So we got time, Jay,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
shall we keep it for?
yeah. You can
So
go.
one question is from Santosh. He's asking, staying in Middle East and importing around 50 chemicals for more than 12 years across global manufacturers. I am disappointed with standards and consistency of quality from Indian manufacturers. Never had issue with China, but even among largest Indian manufacturers, there is always a problem. Your views?
Yeah. So see, if you see, India was never really, poised for the global scale. That's one big problem, that even if you speak to any of the promoters today, when you ask them about China plus one, a lot of guys are saying that the opportunity is out there, but it will come down to the individual promoters and the companies and their systems to who can take a lion's share out of that. It's out there for your taking, but I agree a lot of. See, because like I said, this China Plus One started actually in 2012-13, when people realized that they'll have to set up ETPs, they'll have to comply to the norms. And I mean, honestly, even today in India, more than 60-70% of people are not complying uh, to the fullest. So there is a lot of room for improvement. And like I said, now because the Europeans and the US want a stable partner, at least for the small companies, there is a lot of hand holding. Then I have spoken personally to promoters where for the last 2 years, a couple of European and US companies have paid them $10 extra, but they were like, please give us this quality, please make us this purity, etc. So a lot of these mid and small companies are climbing the ropes, adhering to the quality. And see, you cannot paint all the companies with the same brush. With all due respect to Santosh, I don't know what is the kind of chemicals that he imports, but there are more than 5 lakh chemicals. So, yeah, I mean, there are some people who don't adhere to quality till today, and they might even not change in the next 10 years. But there are some people who are doing the best quality, and I mean, they are there on the global scale at the same time. If not a lot of people are not following quality, there are equal number of people who have top-notch quality also in India. I can vouch for that. I mean, there are a handful of companies who are doing that. So that obviously, if and see, it is a matter of fact that if you see that there is money out in the market for you to capture and for you to win that business, and if all you have to do is spend more on quality and get the right process and equipment, I think any promoter in his sanest senses would go and grab that.
Exactly. So one last question is from Tushar. He's asking, can he put some light on ether as they are purely in niche or patented products?
I think to lie, so yeah, Aether is probably the top number one or number two manufacturer in the world for most of their products, and their modus operandi is always research first, produce later. That's what they have been doing for the last 4 years. So that company, it's a brilliant company. The pedigree of management is just unmatchable, probably, I think, in India when it comes to Aether. So yeah, it's a great company. People outside swear by their products. Again, the quality that Aether gives, it's, I mean, even the US and European guys are not able to question them. Every big pharma maker who is really wanting some niche and difficult to process chemistry, I think, is Aether's client. Again, Aether signed up Saudi Aramco as a client for polyols last month. So that is again a certification that it's the who's who in the world that are lining up outside some of Indian doorsteps. So it's a brilliant company, I would say. The research engine just keeps out giving world class products, and but I know valuation wise, I think it's better to stay on the fence and see how they keep performing. But when it comes to the company, I
Right.
think the pedigree is unmatchable.
Right. Thank you, Jay. And for our attendees, like if in case you had any questions which we couldn't take, you can directly write to me or maybe to Jay. And do give a follow to Jay for sharing his great insights. And thank you so much for sparing time. We have been trying for this spaces from last 3-4 months,
I know. I'm sorry,
and
Prince, for
finally we
doing
had
this.
a great session. Nini, nothing to be sorry. As you rightly said, the space is like in a very sweet spot at this point in time. So we had it at a at an opportune time, I must say.
I think so.
And thank you, Sajal sir and Ishmohit, for your questions. It is always pleasure to understand the nuances. So, guys, the session is recorded. In case you join late, so surely I'll be placing this over my YouTube channel. You can listen offline also. So, thank you so much. And Jay will have another round of Q&A very soon, as and when time
Sure,
allows,
sure,
right?
sure. Thank you, Sajal bhai. Thank you,
Oh,
Prince. Thank you, Ishmohit, and everyone for
Thanks,
attending.
Jay. Thanks. Lovely interaction. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank
thank
you.
you, Sajal sir. Thanks everyone for joining on Saturday evening, and surely we'll be keeping in touch. And if you like our work, do give us a follow to our guests, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of the good sessions we have. Thank you so much. I'll keep you posted of future sessions also. Thank you. Good night. Take care.